displaying the glory of God's creation by exploring America one park at a time. Welcome to Parking Full Time with Big Dave, the park's professor. 10th hole. The par and distance are at the top of the screen. Many of the holes on this course have two tees. There's a long blue tee and a short red tee. In general, the long blue tees are concrete, whereas the short red tees are dirt. And this hole is kind of unusual because on this hole, the short tee is less than half the distance and exactly half the par of the long tee. From either tee, this hole is very open, and it's moderately uphill, and honestly, it's a pretty boring hole. I want to welcome you back to Parking Full Time. I am Big Dave, the parks professor. We are at Ardmore Regional Park. We are in Ardmore, Oklahoma, and so we're in southern Oklahoma, just a couple of miles off of I-35 between Oklahoma City and Dallas-Fort Worth. There's the 10th basket, and there's the view back to the tee from behind the basket. The 11th hole heads back downhill towards the lake. It starts out in this open area, but we're heading into the trees that you can see up ahead. Considering the length of this hole and considering those trees, maybe this hole should be a par 4. Normally, I complain about pars being too high, just due to the history of the game, especially on older courses. But maybe on this hole the par is a little too low, and there are a couple of holes here on the back nine where maybe the par is too low. Also, we're crossing a walking path here. That's the same walking path we saw several times on the front nine, and we'll see it several times here on the back nine. I did see several people on the walking path, and so that walking path definitely can create a safety hazard, and you do have to check for pedestrians before you throw on many of these holes. I like this lake here. It adds some scenery to this hole. Also, it's close enough to the left of the basket that a bad throw or maybe a bad ricochet off of one of these trees could definitely land you into the lake. This is a very challenging hole, and in spite of the par, it's actually one of my favorite holes on this course. There's the view back to the tee. The 12th hole is similar in spirit to the previous hole. It starts out in this very open area, and then it's going to dogleg slightly to the left and then head into the trees you see up ahead. This hole is a little bit longer than the previous hole, and the park does officially call this hole a par 4, and I think that is an appropriate par for this hole, especially if you're playing from the back tee. 291 feet from the front tee, yeah, that's a reasonable par 3. I captured this video on Friday, February the 23rd, and it was a beautiful sunny morning with temperatures in the upper 60s when I came here. I was the only person on the disc golf course when I came here, but as I mentioned earlier, I did see several other people using the jogging and walking trail. We're heading into the woods, and you can see the basket in the edge of the woods here. There's also the lake downhill to the left, although that lake is not nearly as in play as it was on the previous hole. Overall, the course maintenance when I came here was very good. I've read that course maintenance has been an issue on this course in the past. But they did a redesign here a couple of years ago, and the redesign lengthened some of the holes and put some of the baskets in more strategic positions. Overall, I think they did an excellent job with the redesign. Also, the signage is much better than it was just a few years ago. There's the view back to the tee from behind the basket. We stay in the woods for the 13th hole. The 13th hole is a short hole, but it's steeply uphill, and it's heavily wooded, and it's pretty tight. You have to throw an accurate disc with a well-crafted disc flight in order to get up here close to the basket in one throw, and therefore set up a birdie. The first part of the back nine consists mostly of these open and really long holes, and so I really like this hole as a change of pace. I like having this short, heavily wooded hole to give you something a little bit different. There's the view back downhill to the tee. We're back out into the open for the 14th hole. This hole plays moderately uphill, and like some of the other holes on the back nine, this hole is very open with no obstacles directly between the tee and the basket. One of the weaknesses of this course is there are quite a few holes like this that are just really open with no real obstacles. Also, there isn't really any signature hole on this course. There are several good holes, but there's no hole that I would say is truly memorable. This course has some good length. It has a little bit of challenge. It's well maintained. It has some really nice prodigy baskets. It also has some nice tees and some nice signs. But it's not a 5-star course. It's not really an elite course. So it's worth playing here, but maybe not a course you'd want to travel across the country to play. The 15th hole is another very open hole, but the basket is in this cluster of trees that you see up ahead. And so the usual strategy on this hole is to just try to throw it as far as you can and get as close to the basket in one throw as possible, and that way you can maneuver a shorter throw through the trees and hopefully make a birdie. In my case, I can't throw it far enough to make that work, but if you have a bigger arm than I do, and you probably do, then that would be the strategy for this hole. The 16th hole is the longest hole on this course, and it's similar to several holes that we've seen in the past. It starts out in this open prairie area, but the basket is in the woods that you see up ahead. I should mention that I got all of the distances I'm giving you from the course map near the parking lot for this course. My hunch is maybe a couple of these distances aren't quite right. In particular on this hole, my guess is the 596 is about 50 to 100 feet too high, but I am reporting to you the distances that they give for this course. You can also see the walking path off to the left. That's kind of your nemesis on this course. It just comes up over and over and over again, and it is one of the flaws in this course. I do want to take this opportunity to thank you for watching this video. Parking full-time would not be anything without the people who watch. I realize that every day, and I heartily thank you every day. As you can see, this basket is in the edge of the woods, but there's a much wider fairway to get to the basket than on a couple of the previous holes, for example, the 11th or 12th holes. There's the view back to the tee. For the last two holes, we head back into the woods, and neither of these last two holes are super exciting, but they do contrast nicely with the open and longer holes that we saw for most of this back nine. This hole is a slight dogleg right, and it's tight, but it's not super tight. This fairway is wide enough that you can maneuver a disc around the dogleg here and get close to the basket. Also, I want to remind you that I do not make any monetary compensation for anything I do for this project, and therefore the only thing that I get for doing these videos are your subscribes, your likes, your views, and your comments, and I do appreciate all of those things. The 18th and final hole is another short and tight hole. It is tighter than the previous hole, but it's also shorter than the previous hole. And it's a nice hole, although maybe it's a little anticlimactic after all of the longer and more open holes. Overall, I do like this course in spite of its flaws. There's a nice variety of holes, it's well maintained, and it's only 2 minutes off of I-35. So if you find yourself driving between Oklahoma City and Dallas-Fort Worth, I recommend taking an hour or so and stopping to play here. I enjoyed my round, and you probably will too. That is the end of the course. Have a great afternoon, take care, and Lord bless.